tell her this." They said the same to me. And just like that, I closed the chapter they tried to write for me. Her perfume still hung in the air, expensive and cloying, as she wheeled her Louis Vuitton suitcase toward the security gates. She didn't even glance back at me. 15 years old, one small duffel bag clutched to my chest, tears barely contained. She stopped only once, to adjust her sunglasses and toss a last, casual dagger at me. "You'll figure out." That was it. No hug. No plan. No goodbye. "My name is Madison. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been left behind by the person who is supposed to love you the most?" I stood frozen, the chatter of the airport swallowing me. Happy families streamed past, hugging, laughing, while my mother walked off with her new husband and his 2 perfect children. A new family. Her family. I was nothing more than baggage. She didn't want to pay to check. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped my phone. I had $47. No ticket home. No plan. For a minute, I thought I might faint. Then I remembered a name I'd buried for years, a name my mother spit like poison every time she talked about him. My father. She told me he was worthless, that he'd abandoned us, that he'd never wanted me. But in that moment, standing alone in a departure terminal that smelled like coffee and stale air, I needed to take that chance. I found the number in an old message thread, hands trembling as I dialed. It rang once, twice. Then a deep, steady voice answered. "Madison?" My knees nearly gave out. "Dad," I choked, tears breaking free. "Please help me." There was a pause. Just breathing. Then a calm I'd never heard before. "Tell me exactly where you are. I'm on my way." Hours later, as dusk bled into the airport windows, I heard a roar outside, and people rushing to the glass in awe. A sleek private jet, engines humming like a predator, landed on the small runway. And then he stepped out. Tall, dark suit, eyes that matched mine so perfectly it hurt. He opened his arms. "Madison," he called, voice breaking. I ran. I ran into a father's hug I hadn't felt in a decade, warm and safe and unshakable. And in that moment I knew, the woman who abandoned me had no idea what kind of storm she'd just created. The jet cabin was so quiet I could hear my own breath, still ragged from crying. My father sat across from me, watching with a gaze that felt like both a question and a promise. "You're safe now," he said, voice steady, grounded. Safe. That word nearly made me collapse all over again. I tried to gather myself, wiping tears with the back of my hand. "She just left me," I whispered, like I was nothing. His jaw clenched, a dangerous flash in his eyes. "She always was selfish," he said low. "But this? Abandoning you in an airport? That I will not forgive." We took off, the private jet gliding through the night like something out of a dream. I felt a wild, dizzying relief. No cramped seats, no crying in a public bathroom, no apologizing to strangers for existing. My father leaned forward. "You're coming home with me, Madison. For good." Home. That word felt so foreign on my tongue. "I don't have anything," I said, my voice cracking. He smiled, heartbreak softening the sharp lines of his face. "You have me." The tears started again, unstoppable this time. We landed a few hours later at a private hangar surrounded by sleek cars and security guards who nodded respectfully at my father. As he led me down the steps of the jet, I realized he was someone powerful, someone who had waited all this time for a reason to fight. He guided me to a waiting SUV, the smell of leather and cedar wrapping around me like safety. "Madison," he said gently once the doors closed, "we're going to make this right. But on our terms." My mind flashed to my mother's cold smile, her hand around her new husband's arm, walking off without a shred of guilt. "What about her?" I asked, voice tiny but trembling with something stronger than fear, rage. My father's expression turned lethal. "Don't worry," he said. "When she gets back, she'll learn exactly what it means to abandon her own blood." I sat back against the seat, the tears finally stopping, my heart beginning to heal in tiny, fragile beats. For the first time in my life, I wasn't alone. And when she returned from her precious vacation, she was going to find out what it felt like to be left with nothing. The days that followed felt like stepping into another world, a world my mother had sworn didn't exist. My father's house was all stone and glass perched high above the city, a view so powerful it made me feel like I could see my whole life laid out below. There were staff who called me miss, who smiled without pity. A soft bed, warm food, people who asked what I needed instead of what I could give them. My father stayed close, never pushing, never scolding. Just there, strong and protective in a way I hadn't dared to hope a parent could be. One night, I sat on the balcony wrapped in a thick blanket, looking over the city lights, my father beside me. "You deserve better," he said, voice soft but certain. My throat felt tight. She made me believe you hated me," I confessed. He went still, shoulders tense. "I never stopped wanting you. She kept you from me." The pain in those words made my heart twist. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He shook his head fiercely.
"No, Madison."
"Never apologize for being taken from me." And then, as if he could sense the weight building in my chest, he reached for my hand. "She won't get away with this." A shiver ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" He let a dark, satisfied smile curve across his mouth. "Her new husband's a real estate investor, right? And that beautiful vacation she's enjoying?"
He paused.
"She paid for it with funds that aren't legally hers." I froze. He looked at me with a kind of careful pride. "I hired a legal team. When she steps back into that house, she'll find it locked, with an eviction notice taped to the door. Frozen accounts. No place to run." My heart thudded so hard I felt dizzy. You'd really do that? For leaving you like garbage in a terminal?" His eyes hardened. "I'd do worse." I leaned into his side, a tiny spark of safety blooming in my chest. That night, I slept without nightmares for the first time in years. Because my father wasn't just rescuing me. He was avenging me. 2 weeks later, it finally happened. I woke up to the buzz of my father's phone lighting up the nightstand. He glanced at the screen, then handed it to me without a word. It was my mother. Her voice was thin and strangled when I answered. "Madison? Where are you?" I could hear chaos behind her, the echo of an empty house, the panic twisting every syllable. I swallowed, steadying myself. "I'm with Dad," I said simply. She sucked in a sharp breath. "With him? After everything?" I smiled, letting her words roll right off me. "You mean after you abandoned me in an airport?" "That was a misunderstanding," she snapped, desperation leaking through her polished tone. "I thought you could manage." I laughed, a sound so raw and sharp it surprised even me. "At 15? Alone." Silence. "I came back and everything was gone," she whispered. "The locks, the money." My father was watching me, calm and proud, a steady anchor. "You should have thought of that," I told her, voice like ice. "You walked away from me." "This is my house," she screamed, her composure finally breaking. "No," I said, letting each word cut deep. "It was his house. And you lost it." She went silent again, broken, furious, trapped. "You can come back," she tried one last time. "We'll figure it out." I looked at my father, at the peaceful calm around us, at a world where I was wanted, and felt the answer settle in my bones. "No," I said softly. "I'm not coming back." And then I ended the call. My father reached out, squeezing my shoulder gently. "Proud of you," he said. Tears stung my eyes, but they were warm this time, not cold and helpless like before. "She'll be fine," he told me, voice calm. "She has to learn what being alone really feels like." I nodded, breathing easier. For the first time, I wasn't the abandoned child. I was the girl who walked away, on her own terms. The days after that call felt like walking through a new sunrise. No more waking up wondering if I was wanted. No more clutching an empty phone in the dark. I began to settle into my father's world, piece by piece. A private tutor came to help me catch up with school. I got to choose my own clothes instead of wearing hand-me-downs, felt what it meant to eat without apologizing for being hungry. My father gave me space when I needed it, and held me steady when the old fears crept back in. One afternoon, I found him in his office, a quiet storm behind his desk. Papers spread across polished mahogany, legal documents and reports. "Dad," I said carefully, "what happens to her now?" He looked up, eyes thoughtful but unshaken. "Her accounts are frozen. The house is ours again. She has no way to touch your trust fund. The lawyers are making sure of that." A strange relief flooded me. She might hate me for this, I admitted, a tiny thread of guilt winding through my chest. He pushed back from his chair and came around to face me, hands gentle on my shoulders. "Madison," he said, voice heavy but certain, "you cannot carry the guilt for her choices. She left you, not the other way around." A tear slipped free, but I let it fall. "She was supposed to be my mom," I whispered. He nodded, grief flashing in his own eyes. "She was supposed to protect you. She didn't. I will." A calm strength spread through me. I realized then that love could be fierce and gentle at once, and that someone could fight for me without making me feel small. Later that night, I lay in my new room, warm and safe, no shadows in the corners. I scrolled through old photos on my phone, pictures of birthdays where my mother smiled too wide, parties where I stood off to the side. I deleted them one by one, and when I finally put the phone down, I felt a weight lift that had been chained to me for years. My life didn't belong to her anymore. It belonged to me. A week later, a letter arrived, official, cold, stamped with legal threats. My mother's name scrawled across the bottom, dripping with false outrage. She was contesting the eviction, claiming emotional harm, claiming I'd been brainwashed. I almost laughed reading it. My father sat calmly across from me, skimming the pages, unbothered. "This is desperation," he said flatly. "She has nothing." I exhaled, relief mixing with a strange ache. Why won't she just let go? His eyes were steady, unshakable. "Because she's losing power. And people like her don't know how to live without it." The lawyers were swift, sharp, methodical. Within 2 days, they had shut down every claim she'd tried to make, leaving her letters nothing more than worthless threats. When I came down to breakfast the next morning, Dad was reading the news on his tablet, a small, satisfied grin on his face. "It's over," he told me. "Legally and financially. She can't touch you. Ever again." The quiet around me felt impossibly huge, like stepping into a cathedral of freedom. I sat down across from him, spoon stirring cereal that suddenly tasted better than any luxury meal I'd ever had. "Thank you," I whispered. His gaze softened. "No, Madison. Thank you for surviving, for trusting me to bring you home." I swallowed hard, emotion catching in my throat. He reached for my hand across the table, steady and strong. "You're safe now," he repeated like a vow. That night, I stood on the balcony, looking at the city sparkling below, and thought about her. My mother, sitting somewhere alone, the walls closing in on her, learning what abandonment really felt like. And somehow I didn't feel cruel. I felt clean. Because I hadn't ruined her. She had done that all by herself. And now, I was free to build something better, something that could never be torn apart by anyone's selfishness again. Spring crept in quietly, soft breezes replacing the sharp winter air. I'd started classes again, this time at a school that actually cared about my future. My father made sure I had the best teachers, the best counselors, the best chance. Slowly, I learned how to laugh without flinching. Sometimes I caught myself reaching for my phone, expecting a cruel text from my mother, but then remembered she couldn't reach me anymore. That realization felt like a second heartbeat, steady and strong. One afternoon, after class, I walked into my father's office to find him on the phone, calm as ever. "Yes," he was saying, "she has no legal claim and she knows it. Let her scream." He saw me in the doorway and ended the call with a quiet, final click. "She's trying again?" I asked, a small spark of old fear stirring. He nodded, but a smile played on his lips. Letters. Useless threats. Nothing that can touch you. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. She doesn't get to own you anymore, Madison, he reminded me gently. Not your heart. Not your story. I stepped closer, hugging him tight, burying my face against the familiar scent of cedar and something safe. Thank you, I whispered again. He pulled back, eyes warm. You did this, you know. You survived. I'm just giving you the place you always deserved. His words sank deep, planting something powerful inside me. That night, I dreamed of her, my mother, standing at the airport, her designer suitcase in hand, but no one left to abandon. I woke up feeling light, untethered. I was no longer the girl she'd left behind. I was the girl who had rebuilt herself. The girl who had chosen love, real love, over her mother's shallow, rotting version of it. And that truth was worth more than any revenge could ever be. The morning was warm, sunlight spilling over the marble floors like forgiveness. I stood by my bedroom window, looking out at the life I'd built piece by piece, far from the poison she'd left me drowning in. My father tapped on the door, smiling. Ready? I nodded, slipping on my jacket, calm and sure. Today was the court hearing, the final chance my mother had to twist the story. But there was no fear left in me, only certainty. We drove together, silent, the quiet between us filled with an unspoken strength. When I stepped into the courthouse, I saw her sitting on a bench, alone, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. No perfect husband, no shiny kids, just a woman who'd burned everything down around herself. Our eyes met. Something in her face cracked. Madison, she said, voice brittle. We can still fix this. I held up a hand, steady. No, I told her, letting every bit of calm pour through me. I'm done. Her mouth fell open, but the bailiff was already calling my name, already confirming what my father's lawyers had proven. She had no rights to my trust, no rights to me, no rights at all. She tried to follow me out of the courtroom, but security stopped her. I looked back once, saw her reaching for me, and felt nothing. No hate, no pain, nothing. Because she was a ghost now. Back in the car, my father squeezed my hand. How do you feel? I took a deep breath, letting it fill every corner of me. Clean and bright.
Free, I said.
He smiled, pride and love shining so clear it almost hurt. Then that's all that matters. As we pulled away, I looked out at the world rolling past the window. Wide, open, waiting for me.